So today's Cardinal lesson, we're talking about guaranteed retirement income or the creation of it, and having it increases retirement satisfaction. And this is backed up by the academics with some research studies that we're going to get into. And before we get into the meat of the thing, I want to pan to Tom, and I want Tom to share why we're doing this video today.
Yeah, we're doing this video because when you retire, your income stops. You no longer have a paycheck. And what we find is it's really hard to then transition to spend some of your money. And even with the people with the highest net worth, it's almost a bigger problem, right? I can't tell you the number of times people have come in and objectively they have plenty of money, and their first thing out of their mouth is, I don't have any income. And so, what we want to do today is walk through a research study that was done, show you some of the data behind it. Some of the stuff we've talked about and it sort of we've intuitively have known, but it's good to see the numbers backing it up and really just show you another way to create an income in retirement. And so, let me bring up these show notes. You can find these below. They're a link below our video. They're also on our website at Cardinal Guide. We have the board as always. Again, we'll go through the points in more depth as we go through the show. And maybe even more so than previous show notes, I would encourage you to go read this because we're not going to hit every point that's in this paper today, and it really provides a lot of good information. And so we've highlighted a lot of the stuff that's on the board. There's some other stuff that we'll go through as we go along here, but really, I would encourage you to go print this out, download it from our website, and really read through it if this is all that interests you, because I think it's really a really powerful study here.
Okay, so what just comes to mind for me is a person who is a high net worth, the highest levels of net worth. They have a substantial amount of retirement savings, so they can really do what they want. They've come to us for advice. Most of their money is invested in stocks, some balanced with bonds and fixed income, and they got a big pot of money, and they're 65, maybe 64, 65, 66, 67, and they're retiring, and they're planning on taking Social Security before 70, just because what Tom said, they got no retirement income. They got no paycheck. Their paycheck stopped. And so they're going to take Social Security immediately and they retire just so they can get a paycheck. And that in and of itself, for a person that has substantial retirements, it's not going to be enough all by itself, but it's going to be a paycheck that comes in every month, and it's going to give some form of replacing that. And even though that is a questionable decision for somebody that has substantial retirement savings, because they could do very well to wait till 70 and maybe have their spouse file at 67, and then they're going to get really a great return on their money. So this video is not about Social Security. It's about guaranteed retirement income, but it is also about how much increase in satisfaction people have when they have some guaranteed income plus their Social Security, and they get a paycheck or several paychecks every month that are coming from annuities. Now, what I want to share with you is this study is, we don't usually do a whole video on the presentation of academic studies, but we read most of them that are in our space. And, this is all backed up, and the show notes have that, by the University of Michigan study in 2020 that studied thousands of people. It's backed up by the Society of Actuaries in a report in 2012 that people are living longer. And then it's backed up by the Brookings Institution 2015. All this stuff is in the show notes. So the gist of what we're talking about today is retirement satisfaction increases with higher levels of guaranteed income. And what retirees have to deal with their retirement savings and depleting it, is they have the risk of longevity. They don't know if one of them, if they're a couple, or both of them are going to live a long life. And many times people will get into a debate with us where they're kind of convinced that they're going to go early. But we're going to talk about some statistics later. This is a real problem for retirees that have all their money invested, even if it's a lot of money, and they only need a small piece of it or a moderate piece of it to deduct every month to go about their life. it's just a problem. And annuities give retirees the opportunity to buy protected life income. And people that are spending down, so they got their Social Security and then they got this big pot of money and they're watching it grow and then they're just taking a small piece of it. If it's in a retirement account, when they get to be 73, they've got to take RMDs, or required minimum distributions. But even those are a small piece of the retirement savings. So people have a decision to make, and they have to deal with this longevity. They don't know how long they're going to live, and they got to deal with volatile markets. Is that can a lot of that can go away overnight, and it goes like this, and that gets harder to stomach the older you get. So people that are spending down their investment savings really have a couple choices. One is spend freely, and when we look at our example, we had a gentleman doing that with a finite amount of retirement savings, and you hope for good investment returns. Because if you don't get good investment returns when you're spending freely, you're going to run out of money and still be alive and have some life left, and you got a problem. The second thing is spend little to preserve a big cushion in case of all those things happen. Either you live a long time or there's volatile markets. Well, this person is not getting the most satisfaction out of their retirement savings. And so the third option that comes into play is to turn a portion of your nest egg into a protected lifetime income stream. That, and notice that I put a portion, which is a check every month that comes in, and you can freely spend that check. It's mailbox money, because next month in the mailbox is going to be a check for the same amount, which you can freely spend, and you can get up. The satisfaction of this, of people that have been on these things for 10, 15, 20 years, is it becomes just like their Social Security check. It's going to continue paying in as long as they're alive. Now, I want to go to Tom, and I want Tom to speak a little bit about this subject that I'm hitting on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the spending we do see both sides, and I'm going to sort of label it a little bit differently because it might hit home with you. But like that first option, spend freely and hoping the investments do well. Really, the risk there is spending too much, right? Is running out, and now you have life to live, and you're out of bounds. So that risk is overspending. And the spend little to preserve cushion, I would put that as a risk of underspending, right? As I'm not spending as much as I could because I have the fear that I could run out. And then what do I do? Right. And so now you're not enjoying it as much as we can. And so, really, what the annuity can do, and again, like Hans said, it's just a portion of the income. It really can set you up in a way that you have another check coming in that's not subject to market volatility. It's not subject to the interest rate changes because once you buy the annuity, it's locked in. And that's just another check that you can spend knowing you have a check coming in the next month. And so, we address this a little bit later on the board when I'm going to speak to it some right now. Is this becomes really important, especially if we have a couple, right? A lot of times, a couple will come in and they've invested well, they've saved well, they're sitting, in a very comfortable position heading into retirement, and one of the spouses could be the man, it could be the wife, it just depends. One of the spouses is more involved in the investing, right? They are the ones who manage it. They're comfortable managing it. They have a better understanding of how it works, how to be, patient, not be reactionary to what's going on, and they feel like they can manage the income out of that. Which again, I think a lot of people are maybe in that situation. But I like to point out that other spouse, the one who is not as involved in that, they probably have no idea how to do any of it. And so another benefit of an annuity is, again, you set it up, it simplifies things. The math and the data shows you in the study that it actually improves your spending, it improves your satisfaction, but it really helps that surviving spouse be okay in retirement where they're not having to manage the investments. They're not having to figure out what things to sell, how to create the income. And it really, really, I can't tell you the amount of times we've seen a spouse is coming to us, they've just lost their loved one, they don't know how to do any of it, and they are just they're at a loss, right? It's, I don't know what to do is essentially what they're telling us. And so, really, I want you to think through this. If you're in a couple and you're the one who feels like they can manage it, one of the benefits of that. And so I do want to bring up the show notes again, a little bit different than some of our studies here. One of the things that really hit home to me was this part of the study here where it says retirement satisfaction by age group. And if you look at it, it says, okay, if people under 60, not really that satisfied with the guaranteed income, the annuity. Essentially, as you age, that satisfaction is increasing. And if you really think about that, it kind of makes sense, right? Is okay. If I'm under 60, probably still working. I have a paycheck coming in from work. I'm able to put the money in the market. It's growing. I feel fine. Why do I need this annuity, right? You don't really see the benefit. In your 60s, okay, you might be retiring. You start getting a little bit more worried about market fluctuations. You're worried about how do I create this income? The satisfaction is increasing up there. As you get older, the satisfaction is even higher, right? I mean, really, that just speaks to the fact that as you age, and you know this whether you've put this down, in words or not, is just by definition you have less time to live, right? We don't know when that final date is. One of the things as the study points out is that a lot of people underestimate how long they live just based off of what their parents have. With improvement in medical care, with improvement of us taking care of ourselves, you're likely going to potentially live longer than that. So we want to make sure we're planning for that. But as you age, you have less time to be able to withstand the fluctuations in the market and the benefits of the annuity. Really, you start realizing that. And so yes, you're buying it maybe in your 60s, you might realize some satisfaction in that, but as you age, that satisfaction grows. And I think that speaks to people understanding the fact that they don't have as much time to recover losses that they might experience in the market. And so again, there's a lot of really great pieces in the study. We could spend all day going line by line on this. And so I'd encourage you to print it out and look at this. But I think that's a really important thing to think through. So I'll turn it back to Hans.
Now let's talk about how long you're going to live. Okay. And this is back to the academics and looking at the research study. I've had this gut feeling about this all along. But let's just look at it as estimating the length of retirement. And this is from the Society of Actuaries report, 2012. These are the people that price life insurance. And healthy at age 65, a woman can expect on average to live to 91. Healthy at 65, a man on average can expect to live to 89. So those numbers are higher than I expected to get out of a research study. But there they are. And for couples, both healthy at 65, the surviving spouse can expect to live to 95 on average. So you start looking at that. We need to plan for 30 years here or longer. And that's why we use 95 in our retirement planning software, just because there's a chance that one of you is going to be alive to that point, or maybe both of you will. There's a slight chance, but it's a reality. Now, people commonly use, and Tom spoke to this earlier, their parents, the age that they died, and which is reasonable. I mean, it's the same genes, the same hereditary, but it's a whole different ballgame now. I mean, my father passed away at 72. And I'm not too far from that right now. But he passed away almost 30 years ago. And he smoked his whole life. He had several strokes. And he also didn't really have the medicine and the research that we have now. And he certainly didn't have that 60 years ago when he was in his 30s and 40s and 50s when all these chronic conditions were developing. So what the research shows us is that improvements in healthcare and lower rates of smoking are really the cause of this, is that people, again, that are healthy at 65, these are some pretty long numbers. Also, another interesting tidbit that's in the study, the highest 10% of earners, so they pulled them out in this Brookings Institution study and looked at the highest 10% of earners as a group. And men on average lived almost 6 years longer, and women lived almost 3 times longer, or 3 years longer. And that's just simply because of access to health care, peer, and the people are doing exercise, they're in a culture, they have substantial savings, they've got something to live for, where they can enjoy this enjoyable retirement, whatever. I mean, these are just the numbers when they pulled them out. And I think if you look at like our presidents when they passed away, I mean, they would be the definition of getting the best health care. I mean, they've just got people surrounded with them looking after their health. And look how long most of them live. And this is somewhat pointing out the same statistics. So I want you to speak to this for a second, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just speaks to the point that we don't know how long we're going to live, right? And one of the benefits of the annuities is you have that income coming in regardless of how long you live, right? If you're spending down your investments, which again some people choose to do, you're now having to plan for unpredictable markets and an unknown life expectancy, how long that money needs to last, and that really does. And we see this all the time: people way underspending what they could out of fear of living a long life. And then on the other hand, we have people who do sprint freely saying, I'm not going to live that long. And then if they're wrong, they're in a real problem, right? Now they run out of money and now what do you do, right? Now you're having to worry about kids. You're having to take equity out of your house. You're having to do a lot of sort of big life change events if you run out. And so really, I mean, one of the things that the annuity solves is removing that uncertainty of longevity. And again, I think a lot of people, underestimate how long they're going to live. And I think as medical care continues to improve, right, because it's always getting better, we're just going to see these numbers increasing. And so I think it's one of these things that you just need to plan for a long life. And it just is, unfortunately, I think a lot of people underestimate it, and then they either spend too much or they're worried about it and they don't spend enough.
Yeah, so we're going to give a couple of case studies here, and we're just going to talk about them. We don't have them on the board, but one is a very high net worth, and the other person is uh, got 700,000 of financial net worth in retirement savings, and neither one of these people put all their money in an annuity. So we're not talking all or nothing here. We're talking about creating an income plan for people so they have their Social Security check, and then they have a check coming in that they choose, that they purchased, that's guaranteed to come in as long as either one of them, if they're a couple, lives. So then the survivor is going to get this check till the end of their life. And then they have their retirement nest egg. And for the high net worth, in the first example, this guy made all his own money. He and his wife have a large family, and they've been very good savers. They've invested in the market, um, whatever. They're just retired, and they've got 10 to 11 million. And um, frankly, I didn't think this guy was going to buy any annuities because he doesn't have to. I mean, because his spending level is not 40,000 a month that he could live off of with his Social Security check and just spending down those assets. And his number was much lower. It's more like 20,000 a month. Still pretty high by most people's standards, but it's really set around what his income was or his net income was, and that what they were living off of during these last years or their working years. So this guy by himself took some of our videos, which had much smaller numbers, and he said, now how can I, he took the show notes and the annuities, and he created an income for he and his wife for life of 20,000 a month. And it took $1 million to start that income of 20,000 a month for 5 years. Okay. And so you say, well, why does it start and then stop at the end of 5 years? It's because the second annuity, which took $2 million plus a little bit, is going to start 20,000 a month in the sixth year, and then it's going to go for life. So between the two of these things together, they've purchased 20,000 a month for life for both of them, and that took 30% of their money, essentially, or a little less than 30% of their money. And so they have the rest of their financial assets are going to be invested primarily in the market, maybe with a little balance to that for inflation, for uncertainties. They can take risk with that, for gifts and gifts to charity, gifts to their children, creating the ultimate inheritance. I mean, it's all kinds of things. This was 30% of their money. Now, the second example that we have a gentleman with $700,000 in financial net worth, and he had a Social Security check of between 3 and 4,000, closer to 3 than 4, and his wife had the spousal benefit, and he was 65 or 66, and a spousal benefit. I mean, they had $5,000 a month from their Social Security together, and they needed eight. They needed another three to live. And so by the time we did all the math and used the same two annuities that we did for the guy with 10 to 11 million, is we used 500,000 to create the 3,000 a month that's guaranteed for life. And he wasn't too happy that he only had 200,000 left to invest, but that 200,000 is there for inflation, and it's there in case he wants to pull money out for an emergency. Um, the future nonetheless, but it was necessary for him to use, basically 70% of his financial net worth to buy this income. Um, but he still had 200,000 left. So we're just kind of showing you both extremes, and we were able to help him. He's very happy. He's got these checks. It's mailbox money. It's just, and both of these guys and couples are going to appreciate this money 20 years from now, this steady stream of income that's guaranteed, much more than they are in the early years. They're going to see it more as an allowance in the early years. But when they get older, they're going to really appreciate this thing. So now I want to push it back to Tom for some final conclusions about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that if you haven't thought about it, it's worth considering, right? And like Hans mentioned, it's not all or nothing, right? It's not taking all your money and putting it here. Typically, how we build them out as a financial plan is we look to see how much income do you need or want, right? Some people want more than they need. And then we start going from there, right? We build out an income plan. And what's nice about that is it feels very much like it did when you were working, right? You have a paycheck coming in that you can count on, it's reliable, it comes every month, and then you can be sort of hands off and patient with the investments, right? I mean, part of the reason you have what you have now in retirement is when you were younger and you were investing, you weren't pulling it out right when things were getting bad in the news, or you weren't trying to time the market. Typically, what you were doing is you were being consistent, putting money in the 401k, not touching it a lot, and letting it grow. Well, by building out this annuity plan with the income that it provides, you can treat the investments in a similar way like you did while you're working in retirement because you have that paycheck coming in. And it's just something that I think from a behavioral standpoint is really beneficial. And the studies talk about how it improves satisfaction. And just in our practice, I can tell you the clients that we have are the happiest, are the ones that have their income needs met on a guaranteed basis. And that allows them to not have to worry as much about the returns in the market. And furthermore, that then increases the returns to the market because they're not trying to pull it out and trying to time it and get it out before things are bad. Because ultimately, no one knows what the markets are going to do. No one has that crystal ball. And so they end up a lot of times making bad decisions. If they don't do the annuity, making bad decisions with their investments because they're worried about the losses. This annuity allows you to not have to worry as much about those losses.
Yeah. I mean, the focus here is you really don't know how long you're going to live and how long your spouse is going to live. And, the market may perform less favorably for you than you think it will. And so do a little hedging. And that's what this does with a piece of your money. A lot of times we use the fixed income piece to buy the annuities. So 401k and IRA, we talked about that. I had already checked Social Security in terms of comprehensive financial planning. This is all about income. We didn't mention that with a lot of these, if either one of those couples that we talked about, both of them met an early demise, there's cash value in these annuities that would be paid to their beneficiaries. If they die in the first 10 to 15 years, if one of them lives 30 years, they're not going to be anything left in that annuity for cash value for the survivors. So, but there is an estate planning aspect where you're tying up your money in these things. And then we didn't talk too much about taxes, but that's an ever-present thing of, which pots that we draw for the money. So I want to bring Tom back on. I'm Hans Scheil,
And I'm Tom Griffith.
and we thank you for listening.
Thank you.